Hey everyone, if you've been following me on Instagram, then you already know that I recently got Horrified all set up and ready to go, and now after a few plays with my wife and my daughter, I decided to go ahead and give a review of how I feel about it, or more specifically how we all feel about it after a few plays under our belt. So with that said, I will jump straight into a review of shortly how to play Horrified very quickly and, skipping all the relevant details, and then follow it up with my opinion in the end. I will see you in a minute. So this is Horrified all set up and ready to go, or more specifically, this is actually after we've already finished the game. Now the way Horrified works, the central premise of Horrified is that you and your fellow investigators, these little standees over here, they are all going to be trying to win the game, mostly through not dying. To be more specific, you win the game if you successfully defeat all the monsters that you choose to play with. Now you can choose to play with as few as 2 of the monsters to, I believe, all 7 of the monsters. I believe there are 7. But you can have any number of monsters in play, and the more monsters you have in play, that is effectively the difficulty scale of the game. So you win by defeating the monsters, and defeating each monster involves 2 steps: weakening the monster and then defeating the monster. So for instance, in the case of Dracula, Dracula has these little coffins on the board that you need to take off the board. They're going to be in 4 locations across the board, and you need to get rid of the coffins, and then once the coffins are all gone, once all 4 coffins are gone, then you can discard some tokens, and we'll come back to that means in a second, while in Dracula's space to defeat the monster. So every monster has that 2-step approach of weaken the monster, then defeat the monster. The way you lose the game is, there are multiple ways to lose the game. The first and I guess most common one is this terror track. If this terror track escalates all the way to the end, then you lose. Now that terror track escalates in 2 or 3 release situations. The most common 2 situations are either when a bystander, there's your standee heroes over here, but then there's bystanders you're trying to rescue throughout the game. Every time one of your bystanders dies, the terror track escalates. Every time your heroes die, the terror track escalates, and your heroes will come back into play in the hospital. And then finally, there are specific cards and events related to monsters that might result in the terror track accelerating as well. So once the terror track accelerates 7 positions, you will lose the game. Additionally, these monster cards, which you draw at the end of every round, it's effectively like many co-ops, it follows a phase of, good, you do good things followed by game does bad things. So in this case, when the game does bad things, when it draws these monster cards, what you're going to do is when the monster deck runs out, you will lose the game if you have not won the game. If you have not defeated all the monsters, you will lose the game at that point. The basic gameplay sequence is that you, as the heroes, you're going to have a specific hero that has a number of actions as shown up here, followed by a special ability unique to your hero, and then you're going to go ahead and take actions not equal to the number of actions you have. The most common actions you're going to have are moving around the board from location to location, picking up all the items in a location. These are all the items. You can pick them all up. And then taking actions related to the actual weakening of a monster or defeating a monster. There are some other actions, such as trading goods with other villagers, or moving a villager, moving one of the villagers from from one of these spaces to your space, or from your space to another space. So there are a few peripheral actions we're not really going into detail on. Once you are done with your actions, which will commonly be between 3 and 5 actions, you are going to then proceed to the game turn, where the game will draw a card. You will reach into a bag and draw items equal to this number and put them on the board. And these items are effectively used for 2 things. They are used to further your mission objectives, and they are also used as a defense when a monster attacks you. Because when a monster attacks you, you're going to roll dice, and for each damage you must discard an item, or alternatively, you die. Now for this village card that we have, for this game card, we're going to draw 3 items. Then you will potentially do the effect in the middle here. And when I say potentially, I mean it depends on if the monster's in the game. And this card over here is going to be played all the time, no matter what. But this card will only play the effect if Dracula is in the game. And then when that's done, you're going to go ahead and activate these monsters. So these 3 monsters will activate, moving 1 space each and rolling 2 dice to attack. So effectively the game is going to have a bad effect, as well as monsters moving around the board and attacking the good guys. We're going to go ahead and keep doing that while trying to execute on the specific events. So for instance, this character is going to go ahead and pick up some tokens and put them off to the side on their board, and they can now use those for effects. So using Dracula's coffins as an example, if Dracula has a coffin over here, Dracula's going to have 4 coffins on the board, and you need to discard items with value equal to 6. So for example, these items over here are 4 and 5 of red. If you discarded the 2 of them, then that's red equal to 6, and you can go ahead and defeat one of Dracula's coffins. Once all 4 of Dracula's coffins are gone, you can defeat any 6 worth of yellow items to defeat them. And again, every monster has their own unique version of how to weaken and how to defeat them. Ultimately, that's really the game in a nutshell. You move around the board taking actions, you collect items that help further your goals, then you try to defeat the monsters, and hopefully do all this before the deck runs out or the terror level increases to the max. And with that, I will be right back with my opinion. So, my wife, myself, and my daughter all really enjoyed Horrified. It's definitely a lighter game. It's very much a gateway game or family-friendly game. I don't think anyone can really say this is an incredibly amazing experience. But to me, this game kills any form of pandemic island, Forbidden Island, even Forbidden Desert, really. This, to me, is now my quintessential gateway co-op for people who don't really want a heavier experience. I don't think it really replaces Pandemic. Pandemic itself is still enough, much more involved, that the two of them can coexist to a extent, and they serve a different audience. But Horrified is just simple and appealing, and to some extent I can quantify why, and to other areas I can't. So let's go through those areas of what I can quantify. So to begin with, I love the way Horrified scales difficulty. So again, comparing to Pandemic, and I'm going to do a lot of comparisons to Pandemic because I think that really is the closest game in that you're trying to compare in terms of gateway accessible co-ops. So to compare it to Pandemic scales the difficulty by simply adding more epidemic cards to the deck, and that triggers epidemics faster in the game. Horrified is much more thematic with the way you scale the difficulty is you add another monster. So you can have 2 monsters, and you fight against 2 monsters, and you can have 5 monsters, you fight against 5 monsters. And because those symbols and those events on cards only trigger if that monster is in the game, inherently each time you add a monster, you are clogging the board, making it harder to remain safe, and more bad things are going to be happening to you. It's a great way of scaling the game very elegantly without feeling like it's just more. And it is just more, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel like someone, upped the damage that a shot does or something like that. Rather, it's a very thematic, very fun way to scale difficulty, and I really appreciate that. In terms of accessibility, it's so easy to explain and play that when you compare it to Pandemic, where Pandemic, it's a very simple system. Pandemic is an incredibly elegant system. I would argue Pandemic is significantly more elegant than Horrified. But I don't think it's as accessible. This game is very, very simple to the point that the review of how to play might even scare you off with how simple it is. You might look at it and say, well, I mean, if that's it, I guess you move around the board, you collect items, you use them. What's the game here? And I hear that, honestly. I do. Fortunately, when I got the game, I got it based off the rave reviews. And in this case, I don't think I actually saw a how-to-play video. I just saw a lot of positive buzz from people about how enjoyable it was, about how much of a sleeper hit it was, both in general forums as well as videos, and also gamer friends that I trust. It was a thoroughly enjoyable, lightweight experience that was just easy to explain, easy to play, but also challenging at the same time. The character abilities are fun. They really seem to give an element to the game that, breaks your character to such an extent. Nothing crazy, nothing overpowering, but they do feel unique. It's nothing, I would say it's similar to Pandemic. It gives you an edge without feeling crazy. The gameplay itself is very smooth and elegant. Items are added to the board. Those items are useful for completing your objectives. I think what makes the game really shine, though, is how the monsters are completely and totally unique. Each monster has their own unique thematic way of having to be dealt with, and the combinations of monsters you can add to the game make every game feel significantly different. Ultimately, this is a light co-op game. I'm not trying to sell you on it as something different. If that has a audience in your game group, in your family, with your spouse, then great. This game, I mean, I haven't played a 2-player yet, so word of caution there, but supposedly plays well with 2, and it plays well with 3 and 4, I believe. You can just scale the characters you're playing with. But it's light and it's accessible, and light accessible games tend to have a mixed long-term approach in my collection. Short-term, they tend to do very well. Long-term, time will tell. I have found that there are many light accessible games that I keep for years and years and years because it's easy to get to the table with my kids, with my family, and with gateway gamers. And then other times, I play it 3, 4, 5 times, and then at a certain point, I realize one day that I no longer want to play it. As of now, I really want to play Horrified again. I enjoyed playing it multiple times. We've won a few times, we've lost a few times, but each time it was fun. It was fun, it was simple, it was... My daughter picked it up in no time at all. It was very, very easy to grasp, and yet not easy to grasp at the cost of gameplay. It is elegant and simple without being, for lack of a better word, dumb. Ultimately, I really enjoyed Horrified, my wife really enjoyed Horrified, and my daughter really enjoyed Horrified. And really, that's a win for us. This video is brought to you by BoardGameCo. I'm Alex from BoardGameCo. We buy, sell, and trade board games. You can check us out online at BoardGameCo.com. We have regular deals. Sign up for our newsletter if you want to find out more about what deals are currently going on or what's on sale. Every week there's new items on sale. You can trade with us or sell your games to us if you haven't done that yet and you're trying to figure out what to do with all these stacks of games that you're not playing with. Sell them to us or trade them to us. We'd like to turn that back into something else so you can continue to expand your collection. You can like this video, you can subscribe, you can watch another video. Until next time, just remember, good isn't good enough anymore.